When was the last time you truly felt at peace? Just by being alone. Not the kind of alone that feels empty, but the kind that feels like breathing after years of holding your breath. My name is John. I am 55 years old, and for the first time in my life, I live completely by myself. I used to think silence meant something was missing, but now it feels like home. Every morning, I wake up before the sun rises and make coffee in my small kitchen. The sound of it dripping fills the entire cabin. At first, that quiet was unsettling. There were no footsteps, no voices, no one asking where the sugar was or who took the last toast. I used to leave the TV on or play the radio, trying to fill the silence as if I needed to prove that I still existed. But over time, the quiet began to change its meaning. It was not loneliness anymore. It was space. Space to think, to breathe, and finally, to be myself. For decades, my life was built around others. A wife I loved, children who grew faster than I could handle, and a job that paid the bills but stole my mornings and nights. I was always surrounded by people, yet somehow I felt invisible. After the divorce, when the kids moved out, the house grew painfully still. I would catch my reflection in the window and barely recognize the man staring back at me. Someone tired, not just from age, but from years of living for everyone else. That was when I decided to move here, to this small cabin by a lake in Oregon. It is nothing fancy, just wooden walls, a single bedroom, and a porch that catches the sunrise. My friends thought I was crazy. They said I would get lonely out there. But the truth was, I was already lonely. What I needed was peace. The first week alone felt heavy. I kept expecting someone to walk in or ask what I was doing. I would make 2 cups of coffee out of habit, then pour one down the sink. That was when I realized solitude does not come naturally. You have to learn it. So I started listening differently. The hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the wooden floor, and the birds calling outside all became the rhythm of my new life. The quiet was not empty anymore. It was alive, gentle, almost sacred. There is something about growing older that makes you value stillness. When I was younger, I filled every minute with noise, plans, and people. Now I understand that peace is not found in what you add to life, but in what you let go of. Sometimes I sit on the porch in the early morning, coffee steaming in my hands, watching the fog lift off the lake. There is no rush, no schedule, just the smell of pine and the sound of the world waking up. That is when it hits me. This is what I was chasing all along without realizing it. People often ask if I miss having someone around. And the truth is, sometimes I do, but what I missed more was myself. Living alone brought me back to that. I can hear my own thoughts again. I can feel what I actually feel, not what I'm supposed to feel. It is strange how solitude develops its own rhythm. At first, it is uncomfortable. Then it becomes peaceful. And eventually, it turns into freedom. A quiet strength that does not need approval. These days, I find joy in the smallest things. Cooking dinner for one. Reading until midnight. Leaving dishes in the sink because I can. It is not rebellion. It is recovery. I used to think my best years were behind me. But now I see that this chapter is not an ending. It is a beginning. A quieter one. Yes. But more honest. More mine. At night, I often sit by the window, watching the moonlight stretch across the lake, and I realize I am not waiting for anyone anymore. Not for a knock on the door. Not for a call. Not for someone to say that dinner is ready. That kind of waiting used to define my life. Now it is gone. And in its place, there is a peace I never knew I was allowed to have. So if you are listening to this and you are afraid of being alone, I understand. I was too. But maybe that fear is not warning you. Maybe it is inviting you to rest. To listen is to start over. Because sometimes, but the best part of getting older is finally realizing that being alone can be the most peaceful company you will ever keep. There is a certain kind of freedom that arrives quietly. It does not come with fireworks or sudden change. It comes the moment you stop needing permission to be yourself. For most of my life, I was used to explaining everything. If I wanted to rest, I had to say why. If I wanted time alone, I felt guilty. Even the smallest choices felt like they needed approval. Living alone stripped that away. At first, it felt strange, almost too quiet, as if I was missing something important. Then, one afternoon, I realized that I had not asked anyone's opinion in weeks. I could choose how to spend every hour. I could leave the dishes undone, stay up late, or spend an entire day fixing something that did not matter to anyone but me. I remember waking from a nap once and realizing there was nothing waiting for me. No errands, no plans, no one depending on me. The silence that followed was not empty. It was honest. I made a sandwich. I took it out to the porch and watched the sun set behind the trees. For the first time in decades, I felt like my time was my own. People imagine freedom as something loud, as if you need to escape or start over somewhere far away. But the older I get, the more I see that true freedom is quiet. It is drinking coffee when you feel like it. It is turning off your phone for an entire weekend. It is sitting in your own space and knowing you do not owe anyone an explanation. Freedom is not about doing everything. It is about choosing what truly matters. One afternoon, I bought an old radio from a yard sale. It did not work, but I decided to fix it anyway. No reason. No deadline. No one waiting on me. It was just something to do with my hands. It took hours. When the music finally came through, soft and warm, I laughed out loud. The sound filled the cabin. And for a moment, as it felt like the younger version of me was laughing too. Maybe freedom is not about changing who you are. Maybe it is remembering who you used to be before the world told you to rush. That feeling carried into other parts of my life. I started picking up the guitar again. My fingers were stiff, as my rhythm off. But when I played, the notes seemed to clean the dust off my thoughts. I spent afternoons painting. Even though I am no artist, I fished at the lake without caring if I caught anything. I went for drives with no destination. Windows down, music low, feeling the road hum beneath me. There is a joy in doing things for no reason at all. It is the joy of remembering that not everything has to be productive. For years, I had tied my worth to results, to what I could provide. Living alone taught me to find value in simply existing. I started keeping a small journal. Nothing fancy. At first, I wrote about the weather. It's what I cooked, or something I saw that day. Slowly, the words began to go deeper. I wrote about the past. It's about mistakes and small regrets that still echoed quietly somewhere inside. Writing helped me see how much of my life had been lived, trying to meet expectations that were never really mine. Now when I write, it is not for anyone else. It is for me. It feels like a conversation with the person I used to forget to listen to. With time, I noticed small changes in myself. My pace slowed down. But not from age. It was something calmer. I walked differently. I breathed differently. The mornings felt sacred. Even washing the dishes became a kind of meditation. Silence tunes you back to your natural rhythm, the one the world keeps trying to take away. One evening I was cooking soup. A simple meal for one. The kitchen light was soft, and an old song played on the radio. Without thinking, I began humming along. I had not done that in years. That small moment felt like proof that I was healing. Not completely, not suddenly, but slowly and quietly. Friends sometimes ask if I ever feel lonely. I tell them that sometimes I do. But loneliness is not the same as emptiness. There are moments when I miss laughter in the house or the smell of someone else cooking. But those feelings pass. What stays is peace. It is not excitement, but it is steady. And peace, I have learned, is much rarer than company. Living alone has taught me patience. When something breaks, I fix it. When I make a mistake, I forgive myself. There is no one to blame, no one to impress. It is just me, learning to show up for my own life. That has been the hardest lesson and the most rewarding one. I used to fill my days with work, with people, with endless noise. Now I fill them with meaning. I do not need constant conversation to feel alive. I do not chase approval. There is a quiet kind of strength in knowing that the only person you need to make proud is yourself. Some nights I walk down to the lake. The air smells like pine and water. I skip stones and watch the ripples fade. The sound is soft and steady, like a heartbeat. Standing there, I think about how different my life used to be. How I once measured happiness by how busy I was and how much I could give away. Now I measure it by the peace that stays when the day ends. It took me half a lifetime to understand that solitude is not the absence of love. It is the space where love can finally breathe. One morning I caught my reflection in the mirror while brushing my teeth. For a moment I just looked. Not at my hair or my face, but at the man inside the eyes. I realized I had not really looked at myself in years. I used to avoid mirrors. They reminded me of time passing, of mistakes I could not undo. But that morning was different. There was no judgment in that reflection. Just a man who had survived. I stood there longer than I expected. And a strange thought came to me. Maybe getting older is not about losing things. Maybe it is about returning to what matters most. The mirror moment changes everything. It is the point where you stop asking what went wrong and start asking what still feels right. For me, it was that simple. I was still here. I was still breathing. I was still capable of starting again. That realization was not loud or dramatic. It was quiet. But it carried peace. That morning I brewed coffee, opened the windows, and let the air move through the cabin. I played that same old radio I had fixed and let the music drift across the room. Nothing in my life had changed overnight. But something in me had. I was no longer trying to fill the silence. I was living in it. There was a time when I thought being alone meant something had gone wrong. Now I see it as proof that something finally went right. It meant I had stopped pretending. It meant I was finally standing in my own life. Not in the version I built for someone else. If you are listening to this and you are struggling with the quiet, let me tell you something. The silence that feels heavy right now will one day become your greatest comfort. The loneliness that aches today will become the space where you rediscover yourself. You do not need to fix everything. You only need to stay. To breathe. To give yourself time to grow into your own company. There will be mornings when you miss the noise. There will be nights when you wish someone were there. Let those moments pass like waves. Do not fight them. They are reminders that your heart still remembers how to care. But remember this too. You deserve peace, as much as you once deserved love. One thing I have learned is that healing is not about forgetting. It is about making room for peace to live beside the memories. The house may feel quiet, but that quiet holds every sound you ever loved. It just speaks softer now. Some evenings I sit by the porch and watch the sunset paint the lake in gold. The day fades slowly, and the first star appears. In that moment, I do not feel alone. I feel complete. Life did not turn out exactly how I planned, but it turned out honest. And that honesty feels better than perfection ever did. If you ever wonder what to do with all this time, start with the smallest thing. Make your bed in the morning. Brew coffee slowly. Write a few words in a notebook. Take a walk without your phone. These small acts are how you remind the world and yourself that your life still belongs to you. I used to think happiness was something you chased. Now I know it is something you allow. It grows quietly when you stop fighting the silence and start listening to it. Growing older has a way of stripping life down to its truth. You learn that peace is not found in someone else's voice. It is found in the rhythm of your own breathing. You learn that love does not end when people leave. It changes shape and comes back as stillness, as kindness, as patience. So, if you find yourself standing in your kitchen one morning, coffee in hand, wondering where everyone went, I hope you remember this. Nothing is missing. You are here. You are enough. The life you have now is not smaller. It is simpler. And in that simplicity, you might finally find what you were looking for all along. Because being alone does not mean you have lost love. Sometimes it means you have found peace.